Hi, welcome to the High Lady Book Club.
My name is Jessie, and I love podcast discussions and deep dives.
And I'm Katie, and I love all things Sarah J. Maas and outlandish theories.
So we combine those loves into a weekly Sarah J. Maas discussion podcast. We'll be reading along to her books.
We're diving into Crescent City first, and class is starting now.
This is the English class you don't want to spark note.
Hi, welcome to the High Lady Book Club. We are currently reading Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, and we have new episodes every Thursday.
Yes, and today we're covering chapters 61 through 81. So this is your spoiler warning. Those who have read up to chapter 81, keep listening with us as we get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in because we have a lot to discuss from this set of chapters.
Yes, we do. So we are starting part 4, the ravine, descending deeper into hell. Yeah, we're really on that path. Days have passed since we last left off. Last episode, we talked about Hunt's betrayal and all of that. So days have passed since then, and the Autumn King has now showed up at the gallery. And this is the first time we see Bryce and her dad ever interact. So I was like, oh my God. He comes in and he's basically saying, like, you're not going to be punished for everything that went on. And also asks about the horn. He also tells Bryce, like, he kind of has this comment that he loved her mother and has a lot of regrets and has been living in shame.
Yeah.
And also said he would have made Ember his queen.
I know, that was wild.
Yeah, because from Bryce's perspective, I feel like we did not think any of that. We kind of thought he was just this horrible person who treated her mother like shit. And I mean, we never got the full story, but I guess I didn't expect him to say any of that at all. He also leaves her with this, what I thought was kind of like this cryptic jab, I guess. He was saying, you're like your mother, but you're more like me than you realize, and that's not a good thing. And I was thinking, like, what is he referring to? Does he know something about Bryce that we don't?
Yeah, I have no clue as to what he's referring to. But I feel like it may just be their demeanors and their personalities. And, you know, she's very stubborn. He is also very stubborn. He can kind of be a little conniving. He has all of these theories and things that he doesn't tell anybody. He's doing all these experiments and he's very cryptic about it to Rune. And I feel like that's very much how Bryce is and has been throughout this whole, detective work that she's been doing with Hunt. So they're both a little conniving. And I wonder if that's all he means, that it's just your personality, or if it could mean something deeper. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe you're right. He could have just been kind of saying they're alike in their personalities. I guess I was just wondering, like, what he meant, because, like, does he even know Bryce well at all? Like,
yeah, that's a good point. I don't really know. Probably not.
Yeah, just some food for thought. We also go back to Hunt's perspective, and Sandra has arrived at his cell and is like torturing him with, she has his phone and then is like showing all these pictures from his phone of basically him and Bryce, like, over these past few months, like, on there. I mean, it's their murder investigation, but also there's all these, like, kind of cute pictures sprinkled in.
Yeah.
She also, like, uses this slideshow to, like, kind of reveal that she, like, now owns him, which was, I mean, terrible.
Yeah, a pretty terrible punishment.
Yeah. As soon as she came down to visit him, I definitely, like, thought that was what's going on, but
yeah.
Yeah, and the slideshow was like supposed to torture Hunt, but he kind of like enjoyed it. I don't know. It was just like a sick, sad, but like sweet moment all at the same time.
I know. Just kind of devastating. I feel like it was the moment he realized how strongly he felt with Bryce and how happy he had been and how he had made this whole life and like for once in his life had something to lose. And then also, while he was realizing that, he realized that all of that was gone now because Sandro came and took him and, obviously he screwed over Bryce and all of that.
Yeah, and I was just thinking to myself, like, you could have had like what, like you fucked
None of
up.
this had to
That's what I was
happen.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of moving along through the chapters. I'm not listing all of them because there's just so much that would happen. So we're just getting to like the meat of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So back to Bryce's point of view, Fury tells Bryce about Sandra buying Hunt. And she's like, don't do anything stupid with this information. And Bryce also in this same exchange confronts Fury about being MIA. I mean, basically since Danica died.
Mm-hmm.
And Fury reveals that her and Juniper are in a relationship, it seems like. At least that's how I interpreted it. And she also said, like, it's all just more fucked up than you know. But like, we don't get any kind of elaboration. And I'm just wondering, like, wow, what has been going on with her friends that we know, like, nothing about?
Yeah, the way Fury phrased it, it was something along the lines of, I physically can't or I can't stay away from Juniper. And I feel like that is giving mate vibes too, which
Oh,
is interesting if they were mates.
okay. I didn't think about that. I'm like wondering, like, when the mate thing, because in this instance, it would not be neither of them are Fae.
Well, we don't know what Fury is.
Oh, true.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, Juniper is a fawn. So I don't
Right.
know if they have mates. I really don't
Okay.
know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like shocked by that whole. I was like, whoa, I was not expecting like
Yeah.
because we have like known nothing about where Fury is or what she's doing. Like that was just not the answer I thought we were going to be getting.
Yeah, me
Um,
neither.
Bryce was acting like she's over everything that happened, just like done with the whole situation with Hunt and the betrayal, but she doesn't really feel that way. Bryce is telling all of this to Fury, like that she's over it, that she's done with Hunt, that she hates him. But then by the end of the chapter, I think she's just really thinking about Sandriel owning him and probably
Right.
just reflecting on everything they had and is like, I can't let this happen. So, as Sandriel is escorting Hunt from his cell, Bryce shows up and steps up and offers to buy Hunt for 97 gold marks, money that she's borrowed from Jessica, and also offers her Artisan amulet.
Yeah, her Artesian amulet. I'm not sure how to say that.
That sounds fancier. I like that. And the
Artesian.
Artesian amulet is worth 3 million gold marks itself.
Yeah.
So she's offering a lot of money right now to get Hunt back. And we don't know like how she got this money from Jessica, why Jessica just gave her all this to
Yeah.
buy him. But then Sandra refuses this offer, but then takes the amulet and melts it down, which was brutal. Then
Yeah.
Bryce offers herself in Hunt's place.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is going on? I was just like, Bryce, get it together. What are you doing? This is a horrible idea. Like, how can you be doing this right now?
Fury tells her, don't do anything stupid. And Bryce is like, I'm going to do the stupidest thing you could ever imagine. I'm going to offer myself in his place.
I know. Especially like I felt like I was almost getting whiplash.
Yeah.
Like she's like, Hunt's awful, he betrayed her, all these things. And all of a sudden she was like offering herself in his place. I was like, what the? hell.
I know. I felt like the whole thing was kind of heartbreaking because Bryce is pretty much ready, yeah, to get tortured. She knew what Sandriel did to Hunt, and all for someone who literally just screwed her over. But she says something like she can't lose another friend. And I'm thinking that the physical pain probably just sounds better than the emotional torture that the last 2 years have been without Danica. But I don't know. That's just sort of how I rationalize this absolutely insane decision that she made. I don't know.
No, I do think that makes sense. I mean, she's really been put through, like, she lost her best friend in this horrible, tragic way, and a bunch of other friends. And then the one person that she's finally like starting to like live life with again and really
Yeah.
like grow to love and have this relationship that's bringing her back to life literally betrays her. Like, I don't, yeah. Like, how do you accept that?
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. But so, um, Bryce has offered herself instead of Hunt, but then Sandriel is kind of like, oh yeah, most people would think that's a pretty bad deal, me taking you like a half breed instead of Hunt. But I actually know that you're the only daughter of the Autumn King. And it was like, whoa. Oh, she is announcing this in front of like a ton of people. They're like in front of, it's felt like the whole city in a way in this
Yeah.
scene.
A ton of people, and also Hunt. And this is the first time Hunt learns this
Mm-hmm.
information.
Hunt's learning this. And so that's revealed. So Sandriel drops this huge bomb and basically says that she looked into, you know, seeing Hunt and Bryce together. She looked into her spies found this information out. And yeah, so it sounds like she is gonna like take this deal of taking Bryce instead. But Rune jumps in and he's like, well, actually, you know, since Bryce is my sister, she's a part of my family. I'm like her brother. I'm like her paternal, whatever. So I have like claim to her. She's my property, according to old
Mm-hmm.
Fae. According to old Fae laws, my father and myself own her.
Yeah, and so she's
And
not allowed to give herself.
right. He's basically like, I'm not letting this happen. She doesn't have the right to do this. And I was like, wow, that's fucked up. But also, like, yay, patriarchy in this one instance for saving Bryce from this horrible, stupid decision that she was going to go through with.
Yeah. A win, a rare win for the patriarchy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, disgusting that those laws exist, but in this
Yeah.
case, you know what, I'm gonna say, yeah, let's fall back on those laws in this instance.
Let's use those.
Yeah. And Hunt has seen all this go down and he knows, I mean, he clearly sees that Bryce was literally willing to give herself in place of him. So he knows that she's going to keep fighting for him no matter what. So he tells her, like, I owe you nothing and you owe me nothing. Don't ever come looking for me again. She's like, harsh. This immediately gave me Edward vibes from New Moon. Like the breakup scene where he's like, I don't want you to come with me. And it's like, what? Like, I feel like it was like pulling one of those.
It's so true. It is exactly that.
Yeah, so, you know, he's like, don't come looking for me, which I didn't, Bryce, I think that was like, she's like, whatever. Like, I don't think she really took, I think she knew he didn't mean that.
Right.
But Bryce is extremely upset at Rune foiling her plan to be a slave. She storms off and then she's actually attacked like right away by a Crystallos.
Yeah.
She gets like thrown into the Eastros when she's attacked, and then Rune, Declan, and Flynn all come and save her and take her home.
Yeah.
And now things are moving along and the summit is starting. It's at a venue like outside of the city. Sandriel's there taking Hunt in tow. The city heads are there. Fury and Jessica are also there. And then also the Meta Witch, who's been helping Rune with his recent research, is there. And then announced to be Queen Hypaxia.
Mm-hmm.
Undercover. She's been undercover all this time.
Yeah.
And then Rune uses his telepathic abilities to be like, Hunt, what the fuck? And, which I was like, you know what? If I had telepathy, I would break my hidden secret of telepathy to be like, yeah, what the hell? I would have to tell someone.
Yeah.
So I kind of understood Rune being like, I don't care if Hunt knows this about me. Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it was crazy.
I did not see that coming. And I feel like you tried to I felt kind of dumb for not seeing it coming too, because you definitely subtly tried to drop these hints. Like looking back, I'm like, how did I not pick up on it?
I just was curious. I wanted them to be subtle because obviously I didn't want to spoil anything for anyone. But I was curious if anybody would pick that up. I certainly didn't when I read the first time.
Okay.
But just knowing how Sarah J. Maas writes her books, when she introduces somebody and doesn't give a name, it usually means there's somebody important later.
That was a smart thing to pick up on, for sure. I'm just like,
I definitely
the
didn't.
Med Witch that's been around. Yeah, her. Yeah, that was a really cool moment.
Yeah.
But then we jump back to Bryce, who's kind of lounging down in the archives at the gallery. When Micah shows up, he had made an excuse to leave the summit and somehow has bypassed all of the gallery's security systems, and he literally walks down into the library.
Yeah, there was something said a while ago, early in the book, that I guess the Archangel is able to bypass any security anywhere in Crescent City. So
Okay.
that's how he was able to just walk right in.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Bryce very smartly, subtly without Micah realizing, texts Jessica saying that Micah's there, and Jessica pulls up the live feed of the cameras down in the library to the conference scenes at the summit.
I know, I love this. We're all literally watching Bryce on a TV in this conference room, basically.
It was crazy. And it did feel very modern day, because I feel like that's something you could completely do, with people's Ring cams and cameras in their house and things like that. You can pull up the live feed, but they're all watching the interaction in horror, but they're all too far away to do anything. But they send an auxiliary unit there.
Yeah, some lowly one that had stayed in Crescent City.
I know, yeah, because all the good ones are at the summit, and I was just
right.
I was just this is so weird. What is happening?
Yeah.
And then so Micah reveals that he's known about Jessica's archive for a long time, and that it actually is the Library of Parthos.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. We will have more to discuss with that, because a lot more as it happens. Micah ends up confessing a lot of things in this chapter.
Yeah.
We find out that Bryce is the horn, that Danica stole it, ground it into dust, mixed it with witch ink, and had it tattooed on Bryce's back when she was drunk. That was the tattoo that she has on her back all this time.
Yeah.
So Micah is hoping that by injecting Bryce with synth, that it's going to heal the horn, and then along with his own power to activate it to open up these portals to other worlds. And I did not see this coming at all. I didn't think of the tattoo. I didn't think of that as a possibility to anything, quite honestly.
Yeah, me neither.
I thought, like, I was like, oh wow, that was like smart of Danica to like hide it in that way.
Yeah, it really was a clever hiding spot. Although, in a way, it's kind of messed up that Danica did this because she turned Bryce literally into an ancient object that every big power person in this whole, city is after. So I feel like maybe inform Bryce before you turn her into a weapon.
Yeah, yeah, like I feel like it was so smart in the way of like, who the hell would ever figure this out?
Right.
But also like, okay, well, this is also a person that now is this like object at the same time that can be used. So that's
Yeah.
really concerning. And then like I just wonder, I'm like, hoping Danica somehow knew more to know that she should have done this to like I don't know, that is like a pretty like crazy thing to do to your friend without like their knowledge. So I'm kind of hoping
Right.
that like Danica knew that she should have done this maybe for like a different reason. I don't know.
Right.
Um so Micah had like reveals his whole plan that he basically wants to summon people from or other veneer to crush the human rebel. So Micah's going on through his confession and he says that he was a longtime investor in Redner Industries and knew about their experiments with synth. And we know Danica was keeping an eye on the experiments and she was hoping they might help the humans and half humans against the predators. And Danica became concerned when she saw what synth was actually doing during these trials.
Hmm.
And that's part of the reason she stole the experiment footage. And Micah also admits that he purposely released a batch of synth to the streets, like trying to catch Danica, knowing she would buy it because she wanted to keep it off the streets. So then once he
Yeah.
like catches her, he says he won't arrest her if she steals the horn for him. The reason he wants the horn again is to decimate the human army before the war can spread to their continent. And he also is thinking that maybe with the power of the horn, he could even join the Asteri.
Yeah. That is like so dramatic of him. You're already an archangel. What
I know,
more
like,
do you want?
yeah, like, don't you have enough? You literally like rule this whole continent.
I know.
But I mean, I feel like people who are in positions of power like just want more power. So,
So true.
um, but Danica was wary like of his plans. I think she knew he had bad intentions wanting the horn, so she hid it. And now we
Hmm.
know where she hid it. And Micah waited until Briggs was released, basically to pin him as the perpetrator of Danica's murder. Danica refused to reveal the horn's location, and so Micah injected her with a high dose of synth, knowing it would cause her to like destroy herself and the pack. It's like
Yeah.
really messed up.
Yeah. So it turns out Danica did actually kill herself and the pack of devils, but only because Micah injected her with synth and then kept the pack of devils from being able to do anything about it, kind of like kept them from being able to use their powers since he is so powerful. And oh my God, just what an absolutely horrific way to die, butchering all of your loved ones and then yourself. I just feel so terrible for Danica.
I know that is like horrible, and I feel like I couldn't believe it. Like when we were talking about it before, like it didn't make sense to me that she was like a drug addict, and now it all makes a lot more sense. Like
Yeah.
that did happen, but it was forced upon her. Like she was not, you know, taking sense to get high or whatever. Um,
Yeah. And it also kind of makes sense why Sabine had said she had shame, because I'm sure she still feels
mm,
guilty for their deaths, even though,
oh my
I mean,
God.
really it was Micah's fault. But I'm
Yeah.
sure, she still feels that guilt. So I mean, she was not a drug addict. Um, So I guess there's that positive.
Yeah, I feel like if anything, at least like Danica wasn't completely this person that she didn't know. At least it seems
Right.
like. Um,
Yeah.
Micah also goes on to say that he spent like 2 years searching for the horn, and he was using the crystallos to search for it. Um, and he decided to use Bryce to find it, knowing she knew Danica best.
Mm-hmm.
And he also planted the seed, like the idea, in the Autumn King's head so that he would get Rune on the case. And
Yeah.
Rune goes to his dad as they're watching it. This all go down at the summit. He's like, he played you like a fiddle. It's just like,
I know, I loved that.
yeah, I was like, yeah, you should be embarrassed, honestly. Like,
You really should. But it makes sense as to why we've been thinking all along that the Autumn King is so suspicious.
true. So I'm gonna give myself a little credit.
Yeah, it was all in Micah's master plan.
Yeah, he really has this like crazy master plan.
Yeah.
And then so when Micah realized that Bryce was the horn or had it as a part of her was when the Chrysalos went right after to attack her as soon as she took the amulet off. So we know now, like all this time, the amulet was what was protecting her.
Mm-hmm.
And once Sandriel melted it, the Crystallis went right for her. And Bryce actually, we didn't get this internal monologue, but she had figured it out too.
Yeah.
So then Micah injects Bryce with synth, which starts to heal her wounds from him like the wounds that she had gotten from him attacking her during this process confession terrible thing. So at first, because it gives you like crazy power, she's like she gets free. But then in retaliation, Micah throws Syrinx into the Nox tank, which was horrible. I was freaking out. I was so sad. And then he like catches a hold of Bryce again and blasts his power into the tattoo, which is the horn. And like nothing seems to happen. And then Bryce uses the magical books around her to like get free with Lahaba's help. And she ends up being able to seal Micah like in the bathroom downstairs. And then in this time that Bryce bought herself with Micah locked in the bathroom, she uses it to save Syrinx. Like she doesn't run, she doesn't take that chance to escape from like Micah literally using her as a vessel for his plans. She has to like save Syrinx. I was like, oh, like I know that's not like the smartest move, but like, oh my god, I kind of get it. Like,
yeah,
I was just like, oh, reading it was like I was freaking out.
I know.
And Bryce does end up getting Syrinx out, though he's like kind of like unconscious, but she's like gets him out. But then Micah's almost free, and knowing that they all won't be able to get out in time because Bryce is also wounded from the knock who like attacked her. Lahaba stays behind and like sacrifices herself so Bryce and Syrinx can escape.
I know.
This made me so sad. But before this sacrifice, Bryce actually like reveals that she freed Lahaba, that she traded with Jessica for her freedom like the week before.
Yeah.
So technically she's been free. Oh my god, that made me I was crying.
I know.
It was so sad. And then Lahaba replies to her, like when Bryce says that she freed her, she said, "Then let the world know that my first act of freedom was to help my friends." Oh my god.
I know.
So
I love
sad.
Lahaba.
I know that that just like broke my heart. Lahaba unleashes her powers as Micah breaks through the door and she like forces it all toward the tank. So it like the Nox tank, it releases all these gallons of water. And as she's like doing all this, she keeps chanting to herself, like, my friends are with me and I'm not afraid. It's like, oh my God. It was heartbreaking.
It really was.
So sad. I really loved her character, and very sad about it. Bryce then so Lahaba sacrifices herself. Bryce reaches Jessica's office and she downs the antidote of synth that Hypaxia, the med witch, had actually dropped off for her earlier in these sets of chapters. And she had mentioned that she locked it away in Jessica's safe. And now we're like, oh, well, isn't that handy? So she downs that, and then she assembles the Godslayer gun that Jessica had displayed in parts in her office. And I was like, I knew this would come into play, but those are my only useful detective skills.
No, I feel like that's still pretty good. No, I feel like those are still good detective skills. But yeah, I cry at this entire scene every single time I read it. I was on a plane this past time, and I literally had to close the book because I didn't want to cry on the plane. But the line that gets me full on, just full on crying every time is the line about what Lahaba offered Bryce. So it says, "Not a chance to run. No, there would never be any escaping Micah. Lahaba offered Bryce the 2 extra seconds needed to kill an archangel." And I just love this line so much because throughout the entire book, Lahaba's been so vocal about her support for Hunt's rebellion in the past. And she's super proud of her ancestors who fought beside them, even though it ended up putting her in slavery and losing her place in their house, which she was very proud of where she was in their house. And she sort of takes up their fight in this very small way by helping Bryce to kill an archangel, which kind of represents some of these power structures that Hunt and the rebellion were fighting so hard against.
She died for the cause that she cared so much about.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and her friends. It was like, oh, Lahaba, R.I.P.
I know. So sad.
Yeah. I do have a song dedication that I'll share in our discussion here shortly.
Yes.
So Bryce puts together this Godslayer gun, and she kind of set up this trap, which we don't realize at first, but she left the door open to the gallery, almost seeming like she left. So then, but she's up in Jessica's office and has the gun pointed at him. So when he walks upstairs and he's going for the open door, assuming that Bryce had walked out, she shoots him right in the head. And that was such a smart plan. I was like, oh yeah, that was a good idea. And then she shoots him, and then she grabs Danica's sword that is now revealed to have been hidden in the gallery this whole time.
Yeah.
Chops him up into pieces, then burns his ashes, and then gets a vacuum and vacuums up the ashes. I was like, damn.
I absolutely love the vacuum scene. It is so funny to me. She's just casually vacuuming up the remains of an archangel. And I feel like her mom, who seems like, ever the neat freak, would be very proud of this.
Yeah, and I also just thought about everyone watching from the summit. How do you even react to just watching her just pull out a vacuum and start vacuuming him up?
I know, I especially love Sabine watching this, being like, there's the freaking sword that I've been asking about for 2 years.
Yeah, she's like, that slut did have it.
After all this time.
Yeah, that's all. Mike is being chopped up into pieces, and all she's thinking is my damn sword.
My sword.
So this whole thing was insane.
Yeah, that's where this set of chapters ends.
Yeah. Craziness. So we will take a quick break, and then we have a lot to discuss.
Yeah, a lot. All right, should we jump right into our discussion?
Yes, I have my song to share.
Yeah, I feel like we need to start to commemorate Lahaba's death.
Yes, I'm wearing my Taylor Swift shirt again.
I love it.
See, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. So of course I had to find a Taylor Swift song to dedicate to Lahaba. Unfortunately, Taylor doesn't have any songs about a friend sacrificing their life for her, which I
Mm-hmm.
mean is good for Taylor. That would be terrible.
Right.
But I was still able to find a song that I felt fit. Um, and it's about losing a friend, just not in like
Mm-hmm.
as a horrific way, it seems. But it's Breathe from the Fearless album. I listened to Taylor's version featuring Colby
Yes.
Calais. Um, Taylor's version always. Um, and I just felt like the chorus and the whole like feelings behind the song were very fitting. The chorus goes, I can't breathe without you, but I have to. Just kind of about like not wanting to go on and not wanting Lahaba to like do like sacrifice herself in this way, but she like she had to. And that's what Lahaba literally gave her the ability to kill Micah.
Yeah, there was really no escaping him. So this was the only, way out for any of them, really.
Yeah. And I also, just to share just one little verse, it's in the beginning that I thought felt very fitting from the song. Was it says, it's the kind of ending you don't really want to see because it's tragedy and it'll only bring you down. Now I don't know what to do without you around. And I was like, oh, that really fits like perfectly in a really sad way.
Oh my God, that really does. It is
I
such a
know.
tragedy.
I know. I was so, yeah, I was listening to this on my drive home. It was like pouring rain, listening to this song, thinking about Lahaba, and I was like tearing up. I'm not going to lie. It was very sad.
Honestly, that is what Lahaba deserves, though.
She
So,
does. So that is my dedication. Everyone, take a listen. Think about Lahaba.
yeah. Give her the memorial moment that she deserves.
Yes.
But so moving right along, we finally have the murderer revealed, Micah. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
I did not see it coming at all. He wasn't even on our list. And
Yeah.
I feel stupid looking back for not having him as a suspect, given just like how sketchy it was that he decided to put Bryce on this case. Like, that was weird to be like, that in itself. I remember thinking when it first happened how like weird that was. But I think
Yeah.
it was just easy to be like, well, the Crystallos attacked him and like he's doing this because it's bad for like makes him look bad with all these the Crystallos murders going on. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't see
No,
it.
it made a lot of sense. And I mean, I don't feel like you should feel stupid. I also did not think of this the first time I read it
Okay.
either. But I feel like, okay, reading back, there are a couple things, he is just so blatantly wanting to find the horn. Um, and I feel like he does it so outright though, and he's also so interested in finding the murderer that it didn't feel that suspicious to me. But the one thing that I always catches my eye now that I know is when he burns the body of the Crystallos so quickly after they had it. And Hunt's like, wait, we need that for research. And he's like, no, we can't have any of this getting out to the press. So it has to be, erased. I feel like really he just didn't want anybody to start looking into this and finding more out about the Crystallos, that really these people aren't actually dying from the Crystallos.
I also wonder, like, did he know anything about the antidote? Because that's made from the Crystallos' venom. So if they
Yeah,
had the body, like, maybe they could have made more antidote. So maybe that could be like like a motive as well for him to make
that's
sure that they're
true.
not around. I don't know. Just a thought. Okay, it makes me feel better that I'm not the only one who like didn't see it.
No, I feel like it's a classic Sarah J. Maas thing to hide something in plain sight, and then everybody still is like, "What? I had no idea."
Yeah, well, I mean, Micah did have this very elaborate plan. Like, I feel like he did, like, even just finding he was behind, like, the bombing at the White Raven.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because I mean, I guess I get it why he is so against the war coming to Valbera. Like he doesn't want to have to deal with that. But I mean, as an archangel, how much do you really have to deal with? I just think it's interesting how much he cared about that whole piece. I feel like maybe that was just one tiny piece of it and he mostly just wanted to become an Asteri.
Yeah, I would believe, I feel like that motive makes more sense to me, just how power hungry he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that whole reveal was insane.
Mm-hmm.
I also thought it was interesting that while Flynn was watching at the summit all of this going down, um he like kind of says like under his breath like, oh, like this is Bryce's ordeal, or like maybe it could be her ordeal.
Yeah. Killing an archangel sounds like a pretty big ordeal. So, based on what we learned earlier in the book, that the level of the ordeal matches the greatness of the Fae, I feel like Bryce is probably pretty powerful or somebody of importance, which doesn't really make sense because she doesn't have any power according to that test that they did.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not adding up.
Yeah. No, it's not. And I've always felt like she is going to become very powerful because it's Sarah J. Maas. And
Yeah. It's her female lead.
yeah, exactly. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that really was. In these sets of chapters, we also formally meet Fury Axtar, or I guess we had met her way at the beginning, but we haven't seen her since after Danica's death. But I wanted to talk about her because she's an interesting one. Again, we don't know what she is or even what house she belongs to. So I wanted to do some research on her name because there are some interesting theories out there on who she could potentially be. So the meaning of Axtar is star in Persian. And so there are a lot of people who think that she could be related to the Asteri somehow. Some people think she is the seventh Asteri. Some people think she's an offspring of this Asteri, but a lot of people think she is somehow an Asteri, which would be pretty interesting. I'm not fully convinced on that. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, she does seem to be with someone like really important. Like she's at the summit, and she also just seems to like with the Viper Queen when they had that altercation on the barge with
Mm-hmm.
the synth deal. Like she was kind of like stand down bitch to like the Viper Queen. So
Yeah.
I feel like she may be someone really powerful because I remember reading and being like, wow, like Fury has some real like, I don't know if pull's the right word. Like she has like something like people listen to her because then the Viper Queen like
Yeah.
left or whatever. So I could see how she could be someone. I mean, I never thought like a Asteri level,
Right.
but with that name meaning,
Definitely
maybe.
possible. There are a lot of names that allude to stars or constellations throughout, so it could just also be something because of that. Also, her first name, Fury. This is interesting. In Roman mythology, there are three Furies, and these are the goddesses of vengeance and retribution. And they live in the underworld and they give out punishments for crimes. And I feel like this could be maybe Fury is a Fury. Um, and I feel like that is an interesting theory because she does seem to be someone who is dealing out punishments. She seems very vengeful and wrathful and all of those things. So I don't know. I like that a little bit better than the Asteri. I feel like Asteri might just be too obvious. I don't know.
Yeah, and I can see that. Like, I feel like we're meeting a lot of people from hell, but
Yeah, we are.
like Adis, like I feel like I could see her having some connection, like maybe being, I mean, obviously she doesn't live in the underworld, but maybe being this like goddess that like works for like, I don't know, has
Yeah.
connections, ties to the under.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, could go in many ways, but I think it's definitely a possibility. But she's definitely one that I'm very intrigued to read more about because I'm sure she's somebody important and cool.
Yeah, and I want to know more about her and Juniper and like what is
Yeah.
going on there.
Yeah. Same. There's a couple other names that I thought were interesting to talk about. This one's just a little tidbit. But the where the summit is taking place is called the Samathi Desert. Unsure of the pronunciation of that. But Samathi is a goddess of sand, and I felt like that was very fitting of a name for the desert there. So again, just all of her names always have these cool little meanings. I wonder how long it takes her to come up with those.
I know. I wonder like what she does. Like does she just do
Yeah.
some Googling or but I could also see her like legit reading those mythology books and just taking
Yeah.
inspiration. Those books
Yeah.
are cool. I need to go back to Barnes and Noble and buy that Norse mythology one.
Yes, definitely.
I don't think I would
Um,
ever be as interested in it though if it didn't have to do with Sarah J. Maas.
I know. I just remember reading the Odyssey in, what was that, like 11th grade? Being like, God, this
Yeah.
is so boring. Maybe I feel like maybe I would like it now. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny how like something's not interesting until you have like something else you love to tie it into.
Exactly. If Sarah J. Maas wrote something about the Odyssey, I would be all over that. um, Yet so we formally meet Hypaxia as Hypaxia. We've been meeting her all along and we didn't know it. But she is from the boreal forest in the Helleruna Mountains. And the boreal forest, again, I'm not sure of my pronunciations here, but they're actually real forests here on Earth. And they are the northernmost forests in Alaska, Canada, and Russia. Yeah, they're obviously very cold, but they're really important to the Earth's ecosystem, apparently. So I think that's interesting because at the summit, she's arguing for the preservation of the coral reefs in the Eastros when they're kind of fighting about some trade policy or something along those lines. So I feel like coming from that area, it makes sense that she would be so dedicated to that.
Yeah, that is, I feel like it goes along with her. I mean, I really like Hypaxia. She just seems like a cool person who really cares about people. So
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah. I also Googled her name, of course, and Hypaxia itself didn't come up, but Hypatia with a T instead did. And apparently, Hypatia was a female mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher in Alexandria. So I thought that was interesting because Hypaxia in Crescent City seems very knowledgeable and did all these experiments on the chrysalis venom. And, she's at this summit kind of going toe to toe with some of these high up people. And she's just newly stepped into this role of queen. So I feel like her name is kind of fitting along with this Hypatia person from ancient history.
Yeah, she seems like a cool person. I don't know.
Yeah, she does.
I'm intrigued.
So there's a lot more to get into, but everything else is going to have some spoilers from ACOTAR and Throne of Glass. So I think this is a good place to stop now. If you haven't read the rest of Sarah J. Maas's books, then stop reading here and we'll see you next week for our last episode of this season.
My gosh.
I know, crazy. Can't believe that it's, almost finished. But for those of you who have read all of the Maasverse books, stay for the Maasverse discussion because you're definitely not going to want to miss this.
All right, so should we jump into our Maasverse discussion?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we said we were going to circle back to the Library of Parthos, which we learned is real and was the library in Jessica's gallery.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting that we learned that the books date from before the arrival of the Vanir and the Asteri on Midgard. And I guess in a way, this is kind of can be like challenging the right to their rule, which is why they're forbidden. Because owning them is an exact, I don't know how to say this word, executable offense. You can be killed for owning the books.
Yeah.
Because I guess it just shows that like humans survived without needing these archangels and whatever to rule over them.
Yeah.
And most of the books were burned like 15,000 years ago when the Vanir first came through the Northern Rift. But the human priestesses who protected the library had managed to smuggle a few away, which had resulted in the Library of Parthos. And these were the same priestesses who were the original owners of the Archesian amulets.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. So this whole time, Bryce is kind of been like this priestess of the Library of Parthos.
Yeah, without even knowing it.
Yeah. I kind of suspect she knew it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Because
maybe.
Hunt thought it was a myth, and she's like, I don't know. I don't think it's real.
Yeah, maybe she did know like all this time. And I think it's just interesting, like the priestesses must have worn those amulets to protect themselves from being killed.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Or to be able to protect them while they got the books out or wherever they needed to get them.
Yeah.
But so the reason this is in the Maasverse spoiler section is because we see several books on the shelf that sound kind of familiar in these chapters. So we see The Walking Dead, which is from Throne of Glass. So in the very first book, Selena found this book in the glass castle. It had somehow escaped the book burnings that had happened 10 years ago when Selena's family was slaughtered, Aylin's family. And so she was kind of marveling at the fact that this book even existed and how it had gotten into this library. And it makes me wonder, could the library in the glass castle had been Parthos at that time?
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, or maybe it's just another copy of this book in a different library or something.
Wow. So it's the same title, the exact same title.
Yeah, The Walking Dead. Exact same title as the one in Throne of Glass that Aelin is so shocked to see in this library, or Selena at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. We also see another book that we are familiar with, the Book of Breathings. This comes from Akatar, and it's the book that Amryn reads, and they're using to find a way to nullify the cauldron, and they had found the two different halves of the book, and all of that whole saga. But so it's interesting that it's here too, because it's making me wonder, either are there multiple copies of these books, which just doesn't feel accurate, or could it be kind of setting up a timeline that Crescent City is happening like after all of the events had taken place in Akatar? I don't know.
Wow. Yeah, because it's kind of like how could they all exist at the same time in different places if they're like original copies, like the original copy?
Right.
I'm so like I want to know how this all connects. It's so
I
cool.
know. It could also be like that, like the most recent Spider-Man movie with all of the three Spider-Mans, and they just like coexist in these different worlds. And so maybe it's like the same worlds, but a different, like, I don't even know what the word, a different like
Like a
space
different
and time
yeah.
reality. Isn't that what they call it?
Like an alternate timeline kind of within the
Yeah,
same.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it the exact same location, but an alternate timeline where these people exist, but like slight different variation or something? Could totally
Yeah.
be
Oh my
that as well.
gosh. Oh, that stuff is so cool.
I know. It is pretty cool. We see two other books that are named by their title that I don't recognize from the other books. It's a book called The Queen with Many Faces, And I wonder if this could be alluding to Aelin, because I feel like she had so many names throughout her time in Throne of Glass. But I also, the other person that comes to mind is Maeve, because she was this Vogue queen who hid herself, disguised herself as this, Fae queen or whatever. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued by who that could be alluding to.
Yeah, I could see it either way. I think those are good potentials. Because Maeve, like we thought she was a completely different person than she was. She was in hiding and convinced everyone of like this thing that this like her life that like wasn't a real history. She's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm the third sister.
That was nuts. Yeah, so I'm definitely curious about who that could be about. It could also be maybe
Yeah.
about Queen Thea or something, someone we don't know that much
Mm.
about yet, but I feel like that was name dropped for a reason.
Yeah. Ooh, these are so cool.
I know the last book that's mentioned is the title is called On the Divine Number. And so throughout this entire book, the divine number has been discussed as number 7. So I am interested because numbers keep coming up. Number 7 is, this divine number, the holy number, whatever you want to call it. But there are a lot of times only 6 of things. There are the 6 asteri. 6 is kind of the number of hell, but then we also have this 8-pointed star, which has the number 8. So I don't know. I'm intrigued on all of the number things going on in this book.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure the seven's gonna come into play, or maybe it'll be a hint to something.
Mm-hmm.
That's I don't know.
Very interesting stuff there that she just dropped while Bryce is like fighting for her life.
I know that's why, like, honestly, I'm glad that you picked up on all of this because I was just like, yeah, whatever the books, and like, just like
Oh
what
wait,
is
Bryce is
happening?
dying.
Right. I wasn't really taking the time to like appreciate that how cool this was. I was just like stressed.
Yeah. I know. I feel like that's when she always plans her biggest secret. She's like, let me distract them with grief or stress
God.
or something else.
Yeah, she's so good at that.
I know. So a couple other things get dropped throughout this chapter. Declan, we learn has a healing gift, which is very rare. And that reminds me of Akatar, the High Lord of Dawn Court, has the healing gift. Thiessen or Thesson. And so that's got me thinking, could Declan come from the Dawn Court?
Yeah, be like really relative or
Mm-hmm.
I know, part of me feels like all of these characters are somehow going to fit into like a court or something.
Yeah, well, it would make sense because I feel like that's probably where they came from prior to the Northern Rift.
Right. And especially with the prophecy, with the sword and the knife, like reunite our
Yeah.
people, and us thinking they're in like Akatar World and Crescent City, like that is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, along the same lines of our whole theory stuff going, we have the Autumn King's scent. We find that out, and his scent is ashes and nutmeg. And I thought this was kind of interesting because Ember Quinlan, Bryce's mom, her scent is honeysuckle and nutmeg. And I feel like the fact that their scents overlap is interesting. This might be my theory, kind of relies on some ancestral relations here, kind of maybe distant cousins, if you will. Aelin and
A
Rowan
la
vibes.
Aelin and Rowan.
Very distant, no. But maybe 15,000 years ago or plus 15,000 years ago. I'm wondering if maybe this is a hint that they come from a similar bloodline way down the line, that they have these similar scents, and makes me wonder, could this be further evidence that they both have the Starborn line?
Yeah, I could see that because we know how like special Bryce is and like all these different ways that we've seen. So I could completely see that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that, like, there's still just so much we don't know. And I wonder, like, with the Autumn King admitting his regrets and how he wanted Ember to be his queen and all these things, I just want to know more of their story.
Yeah. I am so intrigued by the two of them.
The Scents really, like, they do have all these, like, they come into play and have all these meanings. It's cool.
They
And I
really
also
do.
wish that, like, I wish that people actually had scents like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I know.
no one smells like nutmeg and starfall and like all these cool things.
I know, I wish.
At least I haven't met anyone like that, but maybe they're out there.
Yeah. I'm over here with my Bath and Body Works sprays. My warm vanilla sugar.
Yeah. Yeah, they do have ones with fun names like
they do.
Twilight in the Woods, and I'm just like dousing myself.
Yes.
But anyway, that's not really related to what we're talking.
Anyway, back to the discussion. So I guess there's only two more things that I wanted to touch on. We learn about Bryce's tattoo. Micah says that it's in the language of universes. And I'm thinking right off the bat, those have to be word marks.
Yeah, even though I was freaking out at this time, I did have that thought. I stopped enough to think that as well, that it probably is a language that we've seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last one, to end it on a sad note again, we started our entire discussion off with Lahaba, but in our spoiler discussion for Lahaba, I just wanted to talk about Sam and Aelin and how it just reminded me so much about their phrases. You know, I will not be afraid comes from them, and how Sam said, you know, sometimes I just say to myself, I'm Sam Cortland and I will not be afraid. And Aelin's like, does that actually work? He's like, I don't know, sometimes it makes me feel better. And then Aelin uses that throughout the books. As a phrase that she used after Sam's death. And I think it's interesting, the shift from Throne of Glass, where it's like, this is who I am and I will not be afraid. And then in this book, which has just so much more of a theme of friendship, it's my friends are with me and I will not be afraid. And I just thought that was so sweet.
Yeah, it did give me like Throne of Glass vibes in the way of like chanting that to yourself to like give you that conviction and that like determination in those like really terrible moments.
I know.
So brutal.
Yeah. So that concludes this episode. Next week's episode will be our finale of the season, our very last episode, which means we'll be finishing the book next week. And really props to you if you were able to stop at these last chapters and not finish the book.
Yeah, now that you say that, Katie, I have a confession. I have read ahead. I couldn't not. I mean, like,
wow.
this shit's crazy. And I couldn't just be like, oh, like all this shit happened and Micah died. Okay. Like, no, I was like, what the, like, when you get to the end of any Sarah J. Maas book, I'm sorry, but if you're able to stop, I mean, if you're listening to this and you stopped, like, mad props, but
mad props. You have some serious discipline. Yeah. No, I don't blame you, Jessie, because I would never have been able to even stop any of the times you had stopped. So props to you as well. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening to our podcast. If you've made it this far into the season, you should just subscribe. We have new episodes every Thursday. Like we mentioned, our last episode for this season is next week, but we'll be back again with season 2 because we have to read Crescent City 2 before the new book comes out in January.
Yes, I'm excited to read the second book and finally like be up where everyone else is, like on and know all the spoilers and all the things. So definitely join us next time for our season finale.
Yay! Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks. See you next time.
Thanks for attending English class today.
To keep the discussion going, join us on Instagram at the High Lady Book Club.
Make sure you do your homework for next week, and we'll see you back here.